Another new exciting headphone from Kiwi Ears in collaboration with Zeos Pantera or Z Reviews. And this is a very special headphone because, let me just have a look here. It contains seemingly two magnetic planar drivers inside. And it is actually quite special. The thickest looking ear pad which I have seen so far coming from a stock headphone. Usually, to get this kind of thick ear pad, you need to buy something like a third-party ear pad and attach it to your headphone, something like from Misodico. But this one is very thick. So what does it mean? It means that this thing is super comfortable, and despite not having any type of ANC, will seal really well. It comes with this very nice looking cable here, which is encased in fabric, by the way, and even have this Z Reviews logo here at the middle here. It is pretty much very similar to Hafame style of 3.5 mm termination here, which you connect to this headphone like this and like this. So it offers the possibility that you can easily upgrade the cable for this Serene. And wearing it like this, just have a look at that. Okay. Immediately, the first thing that I'm feeling is that the clamp pressure is not that too strong. The headband is quite solid. The band here is quite comfortable. And you notice here, I can easily apply it outside like this. And for people who are wearing glasses, it is fairly okay. You do have kind of a bit of a minor leak here, so which means that it may impact a bit of seal factor, especially for people who are wearing thick glasses like me. And it is very comfortable. Yes, I can confirm that because I have been using this for a few days already. I am not feeling any kind of fatigue. And it does seem to seal really well as well for a passive headphone. And I would say that, it negates the need for ANC, especially when sitting like this using your PC. So, have a look here. Okay, it swivels around easily as well. So, which means that depending on ear shape or even head shape, this Serene will always be comfortable. Like I mentioned earlier, Serene is kind of a bit special because this is the first time that I'm seeing something like 72 mm and 89 mm magnetic planar fully encased into the headphone close back. Okay, so it is kind of a bit special. I have never seen that kind of configuration before. All right, so what does it mean? It means that if you are familiar with magnetic planar, then you might be wondering, is this Serene easy to drive? Because if I look at the configuration here, let me see. Just give me a moment. The impedance rating is rather high for a magnetic planar, rated at 50 ohm. Just to give you a perspective, okay? This is my long-time favorite magnetic planar of Fostech T40 RP Mark III. Okay, a legendary headphone on its own, Japanese made. This thing is a single magnetic planar and it offers 50 ohm and it has a sensitivity of 91 dB. This is officially, until today, the hardest to drive headphone in my collection for the last many years. This thing is not easy to drive. So, this thing also 50 ohm, but at least the sensitivity is higher at around, let me see here, 102 dB. So, it is higher. This is 91, this is 102. So, what does it translate into? How do I drive this Serene properly? So, when I was sitting like this at my desk, I connect it directly to my MacBook here, listening to my Tidal music. I needed to crank the volume rather high actually for a headphone because I needed to crank the volume at around 70 out of 100. And how about attaching it to much more powerful stuff like 3000 over milliwatt of power at 32 ohm from this Burson Audio Playmate 3. I needed volume at around 24 out of 100. Now it does seems to be kind of like, correct with my guess earlier that this thing need power because usually Burson Audio Playmate 3 would be able to drive something like Sennheiser HD 600, which is somewhere here, right? At around 20 or even let's say 22 out of 100. And this one needed 24 out of 100. So you get the idea that this thing need a bit more of power in order to sound the best. And when I say sound the best, when I connect it directly to my MacBook Pro, I was already getting the kind of sound which I would consider as usable which is entertaining, but not exactly the kind of sound which I would consider as being, focused on being technical. Because the dynamic transient, the way it handles the sound itself is pretty much, I would say, kind of a bit soft overall. But if you want a bit more of that magnetic planar energy, transient speed, resolution, and imaging, you do need to push power for this. Because what you're going to get first and foremost is, of course, improvement with the resolution, with the imaging, with the depth of resolution, and most importantly, the width of the soundstage. Despite being a closed-back headphone like this, Serene is in fact surprisingly very open sounding. I am honestly surprised. I think one of the key reasons is that because the earpad, this thick earpad that you see here, helps a lot. It put quite a bit of distance between your earlobe and also your eardrum from the driver itself. So the sensation of that is that you are getting something which is more wider and more open sounding as opposed to the traditional thin earpad headphone. Now, let's talk about the sound signature itself. What kind of sound are we talking about? After spending quite a bit of time listening to this Serene, I'm just gonna simply say that this Serene sounds to me like something which I would describe as the blue sound curve. So, which means that upper frequency, there's a bit of boosting there. Lower frequency, there's a bit of boosting there. And of course, the mid-range itself. And the overall sound signature I would consider as colored. Colored because it does not offer the kind of transparency which I would consider as being neutral or transparent. So coloration means that it is also smooth sounding throughout the entire frequency range. It is fun, it is energetic. It is energetic because it is a magnetic planar, but the best part is that the tonality and the timbre is dynamic driver kind of sound. It is the kind of sound which does not, it will not offend if you are sensitive to treble, or if you ever complain that, hey, magnetic planar sounds kind of a bit metallic, something like, this Headphone HE400 SE, okay, which is very technical sounding, but it totally lacks, the kind of timbre and tonality which I would consider as being natural or organic. But this thing, surprisingly, very natural and organic sounding. The upper frequency is very, very smooth. And if you attach it to something like Burson Audio Playmat 3 here, which is very resolving, by the way, then you're going to get also deep, or should I say far-reaching treble extension. You're going to hear that micro detail, you're going to hear that swishiness, you're going to hear that sparkle and energy in the upper frequency, which is surprisingly good for a headphone which is supposedly to be fun sounding. And of course, it is non-offensive at all. It does not sound sizzling, it does not sound metallic. And the mid-range is, like I say, a bit more of coloration. Sorry. The mid-range is a bit colored, especially when it comes to female vocal, deep-chested type of female vocal like contralto, or even male vocal like baritone or tenor. So you're going to hear that the vocal, sounded natural, but it does offer the kind of, hint of being colored, meaning to say that the trailing edge of the vocal sounded warm. And I think that is kind of a bit pleasing, unless, of course, the only time that you want transparency and accuracy is when you're doing like critical listening or mixing or monitoring. But then again, all in all, I would say, including the instrument itself, it sounded warm and natural, as realistic as can be when from the perspective of being organic. And the lower frequency, again, it depends on what kind of power you pump into this. Okay, the lower frequency, well balanced. The keyword here is well balanced between mid bass and sub bass. I do feel that the impact, the slam of the mid bass, pretty much very similar to dynamic driver kind of impact and slam, and the extension is quite impressive when powered properly. Again, the keyword here is when powered properly, because when I attach it direct to my MacBook Pro, I do not hear that the extension is deep enough. But when I push it at least using something which is like, say, 500 milliwatt of power and above, and of course 3000 milliwatt of power, then I am hearing very nice sub-bass extension into the lowest frequency. It can even be considered as kind of a bit technical sounding, and it is also super smooth. And of course, last but not least, not forgetting technically, again, let me remind you, Soundstage is quite wide for a closed-back headphone. Would I recommend this? Absolutely. This is a beauty. Thank you so very much for watching the video until the end. Without skipping, I hope. Now, click like and subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram under the name of AndyAV. And also, if you'd like to support me directly, you can join the membership below for behind the scene, especially for AAV Insider and above, which will allow you to see what I am doing behind the scene.